March 12, 1942, off the coast of San Diego, California. The air is thick with salt and tension, waves crashing against the hull of the USS New Orleans as the sun dips low on the horizon, casting an amber glow that belies the chaos of war. Inside the ship, gunner's mate Second Class Edward Eddie O'Connell, known for his easy smile and love of whiskey, peers through the sights of a 5-inch gun. His hands tremble, not from fear, but the remnants of last night's indulgence. The rest of the crew stands alert, watching the skies for enemy planes with a palpable anxiety. "Eyes up, O'Connell!" shouts the chief, his voice slicing through the air like a knife. Eddie laughs nervously, raising his glass in a mock toast to the clouds, the glint in his eye revealing both bravado and folly. But something is amiss. A distant rumble echoes ominously, drawing everyone's gaze skyward. They see it then, a dark speck, a shadow against the fading light. Eddie's heart races, and suddenly he feels the weight of expectation heavy on his shoulders. Come on," he mutters to himself, breath quickening. What he doesn't know is that this idea, born from a moment of drunken miscalculation, would change the course of naval warfare forever. If stories like this fascinate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below. March 1942. The world is engulfed in a brutal conflict, with the United States still reeling from the attack on Pearl Harbor just 4 months prior. The Pacific Theater has become a relentless battleground, and American naval forces are scrambling to keep pace with the advancing Japanese fleet. In this dire moment, the threat of air assaults looms large over every ship at sea, and the need for an effective anti-aircraft defense is more critical than ever. As Eddie O'Connell stands on the deck of the USS New Orleans, surrounded by his shipmates, the air is thick with anxiety. Each man is acutely aware of the stakes. They know that in the skies above, unseen enemies are lurking, ready to strike. The U.S. Navy's existing anti-aircraft strategies, primarily relying on .50 caliber machine guns and older weaponry, have proven inadequate against the nimble Japanese aircraft. Military analysts report that the Japanese Zero fighter can outmaneuver most American planes, leaving gunners scrambling to hit their targets. In 1941 alone, U.S. naval vessels suffered over 4,800 casualties due to air attacks, with losses mounting as ships failed to protect themselves. Nothing worked. Combat handbooks provided no reliable solutions. Techniques developed during World War I seemed archaic in the face of these modern threats. Experts across the board agreed it couldn't be done. There seemed to be no feasible way to improve upon existing methods without extensive training and resources. Commanders, busy fighting fires on multiple fronts, viewed anti-aircraft efforts as secondary. Many leaders in the fleet shrugged off the problem, claiming it required investments that were simply unavailable. As Eddie squints into the sunset, he recalls the chilling reports of battle losses. Just a few weeks ago, the USS Langley was attacked by Japanese bombers, its deck filled with flames and chaos as paradrop torpedoes struck true. The ship's crew had barely enough time to respond, let alone mount an effective defensive maneuver. In the weeks that followed, the Navy's fixation on heavy artillery and traditional tactics continued to overshadow the pressing need for innovation. Gunners' mates felt the weight of responsibility as they were assigned to 5-inch guns that lacked the rapid-fire capability needed to combat swift aerial assaults. The terminology used in strategy briefings often seemed disheartening. Defensive positions, fire arcs, and lead calculations became synonymous with failure. Every gunnery drill left them feeling more helpless. The crews would practice their aim, focusing on stationary targets while the world outside their exercises grew darker. The staggering statistics of losses haunted Eddie's thoughts. In the first quarter of 1942 alone, the Pacific Fleet suffered more than 250 aircraft losses, a testament to the air superiority of the enemy. Back in the command center, officers exchanged grim glances. They studied charts of aerial engagements featuring enemy fighters zooming above their ships. Each new report brought news of more downed pilots and sinking vessels. Tensions escalated as commanders debated how to allocate resources, with many prioritizing surface warfare over air defense. At this moment in history, the feeling of impending doom permeated every naval base. The Navy's outdated tactics were not only ineffective, they were contributing to a staggering number of casualties. Experts and commanders alike were caught in a cycle of despair, locked into traditional structures that resisted change. The situation was dire, and morale among the crew was dwindling. The men aboard the New Orleans felt as if they were fighting not just an enemy, but the very system that constrained them. "The brass doesn't get it," one sailor muttered during a break, his voice low but tense. "They think guns can solve everything." "Yeah, but what do we do when they come from the sky?" another replied, his frustration palpable. As Eddie listened to their fears, he felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The pressures of duty weighed heavily upon him, and the dread that accompanied each day at sea was an inescapable shadow. Despite the fear, a flicker of hope remained. Among the crew, there was a shared understanding that something had to change. Eddie's easy smile masked a determination that lingered beneath the surface, a belief that perhaps, just maybe, a new approach could emerge from within their ranks. But with the stakes so high, every moment of indecision felt like a countdown to disaster. As night fell and the ship was shrouded in darkness, Eddie returned to his post, staring into the abyss of the night sky. He thought of the countless lives on the line, each sailor waiting for the harrowing sound of an air raid. The cold ocean air bit at his skin, yet it was a refreshing reminder of the reality they faced. The men around him were not just sailors. They were brothers bound by shared sacrifice and the determination to survive. Little did they know, a breakthrough was waiting to be uncovered in the unlikeliest of circumstances. A solution born not from the highest echelons of command, but from a simple gunner who fearlessly embraced the chaos around him. What he didn't know was that this idea would change the war. If stories like this fascinate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below. March 1942. Eddie O'Connell, a 31-year-old gunner aboard the USS New Orleans, stares out over the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The sun gleams harshly, reflecting off the steel hull of the ship. But Eddie's mind is shrouded in a fog thicker than the humidity pressing down on him. The air is electric, a palpable tension radiating from his shipmates, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. Eddie's background is humble. Born and raised in Boston, he grew up in a modest Irish family. His father was a dock worker, and his mother, a seamstress, instilled in him the values of hard work and perseverance. He joined the Navy in 1936, seeking adventure and purpose, unaware that he would soon find himself in the heart of a war that would test those very values to their limits. As the ship lurches with the rolling waves, Eddie grips the rail, feeling a familiar restlessness. He glances around at his fellow sailors, their eyes darting across the horizon, searching for the enemy that seems only a heartbeat away. "They say the Japs are coming for us," whispers a young seaman, his voice trembling. Eddie nods, his heart racing. They all know that the Japanese forces are relentless, their air raids devastating American ships with alarming precision. In the midst of this chaos, Eddie's thoughts drift to his wife, Margaret, and their 2 children back in Boston. He can almost see their smiles, hear their laughter. He closes his eyes for a moment, trying to absorb that feeling of home. But the grinding reality of war quickly pulls him back. He shakes his head, dispelling the moment of warmth. "What's on your mind, O'Connell?" A voice breaks through the haze. It's Chief Gunner's mate, Thompson, a grizzled veteran with a no-nonsense attitude. Eddie clears his throat, hesitant. Just thinking about how we can shoot those bastards down before they get us. Thompson's eyes narrow. You think we could use that new firing technique they've been talking about? The one where we lead the target? Eddie's brow furrows. They say it's too hard to calculate on the move. The enemy's too fast. He feels a knot tightening in his stomach, the weight of inaction pressing down on him. But as Eddie watches the horizon, a wild idea begins to form, one that seems almost reckless. Perhaps leading the target could be simplified. He recalls a peculiar moment from earlier in his service, a time when he'd been drinking with his comrades, joking about how to aim when drunk. The absurdity of it suddenly ignites a spark. What if we just let instinct take over? Aim ahead of where the planes are. Let our brains do the calculating while we fire. Thompson raises an eyebrow. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, O'Connell. You can't just shoot and hope. Why not? Eddie shoots back, passion rising in his voice. We're in a fight for our lives here. We can't keep waiting for orders that might never come. Thompson shakes his head, but there's a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. Eddie can sense it. If we wait for the brass to make a decision, we'll be dead before they act. We need to act now. That night, Eddie tosses and turns in his cramped bunk, the shadows of doubt and fear swirling in his mind. What if this crazy idea fails? What if it gets someone killed? Yet, amidst the turmoil, a flicker of determination ignites. He knows he has to at least try. The following day, he seeks out Lieutenant Commander John Jack McClure, a young officer with a reputation for being open-minded. In the dimly lit officers' mess, Eddie lays out his idea with fervor. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. What if we change the technique? Instead of waiting for perfect calculations, we shoot where the planes will be. McClure listens intently, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. You're suggesting a more intuitive approach, almost instinctual. It's risky, Eddie. You're talking about changing protocol. Sir, our current method isn't working. We need something bold. Eddie's heart pounds in his chest. If we keep doing what we've always done, we're dead. McClure furrows his brow, considering the implications. The air hangs heavy with uncertainty. You do realize if this fails, it'll fall on you, right? I know, but I'm willing to take that risk, Eddie replies, a steely resolve etched on his face. If we want to survive, we need to adapt. They exchange a long look, the weight of the moment heavy between them. Finally, McClure exhales. All right, let's run a test. But if this goes south, it's on your head. Eddie feels a surge of hope as he steps out of the office. He might just be on the verge of something extraordinary. The days that follow are a whirlwind of preparations. Eddie works with a small team of gunner mates, sketching out new firing protocols and practicing relentlessly. They improvise, firing at targets while adjusting their aim based on intuition rather than strict calculations. On one particularly tense afternoon, the crew gathers on the deck, the sun casting an ominous glow over the sea. The distant rumble of planes sends a wave of anxiety through them. You ready, O'Connell? Thompson asks, his voice steady but laced with worry. Eddie takes a deep breath, his heart racing. More than ever. Just remember, trust your instincts. The first test is chaotic. As the enemy planes swoop down, Eddie's team fires, and for a moment, the world narrows to the rhythm of gunfire and the roar of engines. But the first volley goes wide, the planes zipping past with unsettling ease. Damn it. Thompson curses, frustration etched across his face. But Eddie, sensing the energy shift, calls out, Adjust your aim! Think about where they're going! With renewed determination, they take a second shot, this time adjusting their lead based on Eddie's insight. The air crackles with tension, and for the first time a plane spirals downward, smoke trailing behind it. Cheers erupt from the crew, the weight of fear lifting just a fraction. Eddie's heart swells with pride as his comrades rally around him, their spirits reignited. "We can do this!" he shouts, adrenaline surging through him. The taste of victory, however small, is intoxicating. As the sun sets over the Pacific, casting a golden hue across the water, Eddie O'Connell feels a sense of purpose awakening within him. He knows they are up against insurmountable odds, but for the first time, he believes they can change the tide of war. What he doesn't know is that this idea will change the war. If stories like this fascinate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below. March 1942. USS New Orleans, Pacific Ocean. The air is dense with the scent of salt and sweat, punctuated by the distant echo of waves crashing against the hull. Eddie O'Connell, 31, stands alone on the deck, his heart racing like the tempests brewing within the dark clouds on the horizon. As a gunner, he feels the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The world is at war, and lives depend on his hands. Eddie glances over at his crewmates, their faces grim, shadows of worry etched into their brows. Each man carries the burden of fear and doubt, questioning their survival against unseen enemies. He grips the cold metal of the gun mount, seeking strength in its solidity. But within him stirs an idea that feels reckless, perhaps even foolish, but it flickers with the promise of hope. "Eddie, are you daydreaming again?" shouts Tom, a wiry sailor with mischief in his eyes. The levity is fleeting, but it jolts Eddie's mind back to the present. "No, just thinking," he replies, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Better think about shooting straight. We don't need another one of your wild ideas," Tom jokes, but a flicker of seriousness crosses his face. "You know what happened last time." What Eddie doesn't share is the image that has been haunting him. The missed targets, the enemy planes soaring unfettered above their heads, the sense of helplessness that gripped him as bullets rained down. What if he could change that? What if instead of firing at a target they could anticipate the enemy's movements? That night, a storm brews, both outside and within Eddie. He lies in his cramped quarters, the ship rocking gently beneath him. The rhythmic creaking of wood and metal fills the silence. Images flash before his eyes, planes swooping low, the frantic orders of his superiors, and the faces of men lost to the flames of war. "I can't let this keep happening," he whispers to himself, resolve hardening within. By morning, Eddie has made up his mind. He seeks out an unlikely ally, Lieutenant Commander William "Bill" Hayes, a pragmatic officer known for his innovative approach to warfare. Hayes is reviewing reports in his cramped office, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and frustration. "Commander, I need to talk to you," Eddie blurts out, his heart pounding. Hayes looks up, surprise flickering across his features. "Eddie, this better be good. I have a meeting in 10, he replies, drumming his fingers on the desk. "It's about the guns. I think we can improve our aim," Eddie starts, but Hayes cuts him off. "Look, we're all under pressure. If it were that easy, we'd have done it already." But Eddie presses on, fueled by desperation. What if we adjust our firing pattern? Not just aim at where the plane is, but where it's going to be? "I saw it in a game back home. Predict the trajectory." Hayes raises an eyebrow, skepticism written all over his face. "And how do you propose we do that? You want to shoot at ghosts?" "What if we use a different method of calculation? I can show you, if you give me a chance." Bill studies Eddie for a moment, weighing the risk against the man's determination. "Fine. You have 3 days to prove it. But this better not blow up in my face, O'Connell." Eddie nods, a mix of excitement and dread swirling inside him. He has no formal training in ballistics. He's just a gunner trying to make a difference. But he knows he can't back down now. As the sun sets, Eddie gathers a small group of trusted mates, Tom, Sam, and Mike. We're going to try something crazy. It could be dangerous, but if we pull it off, we could save lives, he explains, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the humid air. What are we doing? The captain's gonna have our heads, Tom grumbles, but there's a spark in his eyes. We're going to test a new firing pattern. I need all of you to trust me, Eddie says, his voice steady despite the uncertainty. The crew assembles under the cover of darkness, the gentle hum of the ocean surrounding them. They rig the equipment, hearts racing, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Eddie can feel the fear, the excitement of the unknown. It's a dance on the precipice of disaster. Let's do this, he whispers, and the first shots reverberate across the water, sending echoes into the night. The target, a makeshift silhouette of a plane, hangs eerily against the backdrop of the moonlit sky. Each shot misses, and despair seeps into the crew's spirits. "This isn't working, Eddie," Mike shouts, frustration bubbling over. "No, wait. We need to adjust our calculations. Aim for where it will be, not where it is," Eddie urges, determination flooding his voice. They recalibrate, hearts pounding in unison. The second test begins, and as Eddie pulls the trigger, the bullet flies true, striking the target with a resounding thud. Silence falls, followed by a roar of triumph. "Did you see that? We did it!" Tom shouts, slapping Eddie on the back. Laughter and cheers erupt, but beneath the jubilation lies a tension that won't easily dissipate. Despite the initial success, doubts linger. Eddie knows he needs to present this to Hayes, to the brass, and that could lead to either validation or disaster. The next morning, they gather in the command center, the tension palpable. Eddie stands before the officers, including Hayes, his heart racing. "Gentlemen, we've developed a new technique for targeting aircraft," he states, his voice steady but filled with apprehension. Eddie presents his findings, detailing the tests, showing data that illustrates their success, the excitement in his chest battling the fear of rejection. "Interesting. But what's to stop this from being a fluke?" one officer asks, arms crossed, skepticism radiating off him. "Because we need to try it in real combat," Eddie responds, his voice gaining strength. "Lives depend on it." Silence ensues. Hayes exhales slowly, finally breaking the tension. "All right, we'll conduct a trial during the next operation. But if this goes wrong—" "It won't," Eddie interjects, unyielding in his resolve. The weeks stretch painfully as they prepare for the trial. Eddie can hardly sleep, his mind racing with possibilities. The day of the operation dawns, the air heavy with anticipation as they set out to sea. As enemy planes swarm, chaos erupts, bullets whizzing past. "Now!" Eddie shouts, adrenaline surging. They adjust their aim, hearts pounding as they pull the triggers. The air crackles with tension, then the first plane spirals down, exploding in a fiery blaze. Cheers erupt among the crew, disbelief mingling with jubilation. Eddie had done it. They had done it together. As the smoke clears, the realization sinks in. Their losses have reduced drastically. The numbers come in. Eddie's heart races as he hears the statistics. Losses reduced by 85%. The crew embraces, their joy mingling with relief. In that moment, amidst the chaos of war, humanity shines through. Courage born from despair has transformed the tide. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button. Eddie smiles, a mix of disbelief and pride washing over him. April 15th, 1942. USS New Orleans, somewhere in the Pacific. The atmosphere is thick with anxiety as the crew gathers in the cramped, dimly lit conference room. Maps of enemy territories cover the walls, but the focus is on one man, Eddie O'Connell. The gunner stands at the front, his hands trembling slightly, a stark contrast to the steely resolve in his eyes. "Gentlemen," Captain Hawkins begins, his voice booming, yet weighed down by the gravity of their situation. "We're facing relentless air attacks. Our losses are mounting, and current methods are failing us." On the edges of the room, murmurs of dissent ripple through the ranks. "Nothing works," one officer pipes up, arms crossed defiantly. "We've tried everything, and nothing can touch those dive bombers." Eddie shifts uncomfortably. He feels the skepticism like a cold draft, creeping in from the cracks of his confidence. But his thoughts race back to that fateful day when his unorthodox shooting method turned near disaster into a kill. "What if we don't aim straight?" he believes, recalling the instinctive swing of his gun as the planes dove. "What if we anticipate their trajectory instead?" A senior officer scoffs, shaking his head. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, O'Connell. We need precision, not guesswork." Eddie's pulse quickens. "But that's just it," he argues, his voice gaining strength. "When they dive, they're unpredictable. If we fire in anticipation, we might just catch them off guard, shift the odds in our favor." There's silence, a heavy pause as the officers exchange glances. Captain Hawkins studies Eddie, weighing the man against the heavy burden of responsibility. "You're suggesting we abandon traditional methods for instinct?" "Yes, sir," Eddie replies, feeling a flicker of hope. "An unconventional strategy could surprise them. It's a risk, but—" "Every soldier's life is on the line, O'Connell," Hawkins interrupts, tension knitting his brow. "What you're proposing could lead to more casualties." In that moment, Eddie's mind drifts to his two younger brothers back home. "I've seen them go down, sir. Our ships, our men. If we keep doing the same thing, we'll lose more than we can afford." The raw emotion hangs in the air, a stark reminder of the war's toll. The captain nods slowly, contemplating. "You have one chance to prove this theory," he finally says, his voice resolute. "A live test. If it fails, you're finished." Eddie feels the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I'll take that chance, sir. I'll make it work." Days pass, and the crew prepares for the test. Eddie spends countless hours with his fellow gunners, transforming his unorthodox idea into a structured plan. They sketch trajectories, calculate angles, and practice the unthinkable, firing not at the planes but where they anticipate the planes will be. May 3rd, 1942. The skies are overcast, a thick blanket of clouds hanging ominously above. Eddie stands at his post, his heart pounding like a war drum. The ship rocks gently, but inside, a tempest brews. "Come on, boys. We can do this," he murmurs to his comrades, trying to stoke the flickering flame of courage. Suddenly, alarms blare and the air is filled with the roar of engines. Glares of sunlight break through the clouds, revealing enemy bombers slicing through the sky, diving like hawks for a kill. Eddie's breath catches in his throat. "Gunners, ready!" he shouts, adrenaline surging through him. The crew snaps into action, the tension palpable. "Aim for the predicted path. Fire on my mark." The dive bombers swoop closer, their shadows darkening the deck. Eddie's heart races, fear and determination intertwining. "Now!" he commands, releasing the floodgates of gunfire. Rounds rattle off their mounts, the gun's barrel flaring with life. Bullets streak through the air, not at where the planes are, but where they will be. Eddie's pulse syncs with the rhythm of the gunfire, A dance of chaos turned art. Then, a sudden explosion. One of the dive bombers erupts into flames, spiraling out of control. Cheers erupt from the crew, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife. "We hit one! We actually hit one!" Eddie shouts, disbelief mingling with jubilation. The following hours become a blur of gunfire and glory. Eddie and his crew shoot down several more enemy planes, the tide of the battle shifting like the winds above. The sense of victory washes over them, an elation that feels almost surreal. When the smoke clears and the last enemy plane falls, Eddie stands there, heart racing, shoulders heavy with the weight of their collective triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, they had rewritten the rules of aerial combat. Back on the ship, the atmosphere is electric. Officers rush in, excitement palpable. Captain Hawkins approaches Eddie, a proud smile breaking the stern facade. "You may have just saved lives out here, O'Connell. We need to document this." The following days are a whirlwind of reports and reviews. Analysts pore over the data, comparing old methods with Eddie's unorthodox approach. Losses reduced by 85%, one statistician notes, shaking his head in disbelief. This could change everything. But in the midst of the accolades, Eddie remains grounded. He thinks of the men who fought alongside him, who trusted his instinct, and of the families waiting back home. His heart swells with a mixture of pride and humility. As the crew prepares to report their findings to the higher-ups, tensions rise. Eddie stands before a panel of military officials, his heart pounding once more. They're skeptical, their expressions hard and unyielding. "Your methods are unorthodox, O'Connell," one general states, arms crossed. "What makes you think this will hold in future engagements?" "Because it worked," Eddie replies, voice steady despite his nerves. "We've changed the way we look at air combat. It's about anticipating movements, not just reacting." "Anticipation is not strategy," another officer chimes in dismissively. "It's luck." Eddie meets their gazes, determination burning within him. "Luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. We've prepared for this. We can't afford to stick to outdated tactics while the enemy evolves." The room is silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Captain Hawkins steps forward, backing Eddie up with fierce resolve. "I stand by O'Connell's findings. We need to adapt, or we will continue to lose." Finally, one of the senior officers leans back, contemplating the data laid before them. If losses have indeed dropped this dramatically, perhaps it warrants further testing. As the room buzzes with newfound energy, Eddie breathes a sigh of relief. The conversation shifts towards implementing the new strategy across the fleet. The tides are turning. In the weeks that follow, Eddie's technique sees widespread adoption, transforming naval aviation tactics. The once skeptical officials embrace the changes, recognizing the necessity of innovation in warfare. As Eddie watches technology adapt and evolve, a sense of pride fills him. His victory, however, is tempered with the knowledge of ongoing battles. The cost of war remains heavy on his heart, yet he continues to push forward, driven by hope and the desire to protect the lives of those around him. By June 1942, Eddie's method becomes standard practice. He stands on the deck of the USS New Orleans, gazing out at the horizon, where the sun sets with a promise of change. Through the fog of war, he has found his place, not just as a gunner, but as a catalyst for innovation. Innovation doesn't come without struggle, but those willing to take the leap can indeed change the course of history. If you've been inspired by Eddie's journey, make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of resilience and courage. March 15th, 1942. USS New Orleans. The stifling air aboard the ship was thick with anticipation, mingling with the salty breeze of the Pacific. Inside the cramped quarters of the Naval Command, tension hung heavily as officers gathered around a mahogany table, papers strewn across its surface like fallen leaves. Captain Baird, a robust figure with a booming voice, addressed the room, his brow furrowed with concern. "Gentlemen, we are losing too many aircraft. Our current anti-aircraft methods are failing us." His gaze swept the room, landing squarely on Lieutenant Eddie O'Connell, who was seated at the back, nervously tapping his fingers on the table. Eddie had been the subject of hushed conversation since the incident, a day when he, in a drunken haze, had inadvertently demonstrated a revolutionary gunner technique that had caught the attention of the crew. An older officer, Commander Thompson, scoffed, his disbelief palpable. "Eddie O'Connell? The drunk gunner? We can't base our strategies on a mistake made during a bender." Eddie's heart raced, a mix of anger and humiliation flooding his veins. "It wasn't a mistake," he interjected, his voice steadier than he felt. You shot down a plane while intoxicated," Thompson continued, raising an eyebrow. "That's hardly a viable strategy." A murmur spread through the room, a cacophony of opinions merging into a cloud of doubt. "Experts agree," Thompson declared. "It couldn't be done. We need proven methods, not wild whims." Eddie clenched his fists, the weight of disbelief suffocating. He could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, a drumbeat of defiance. "But what if I can prove it?" he challenged, his voice rising above the others. "What if I can show you that it works?" Captain Baird's eyes narrowed, contemplating the implications. "You're suggesting we allow you to demonstrate this technique in actual combat?" Eddie's pulse quickened. "Yes, sir. Give me a chance. Let me show you that it's effective." The room fell silent, the air crackling with uncertainty. Finally, Baird sighed deeply. "Very well. We will schedule a test. But understand this. If you fail, it will be on you, Lieutenant." Days passed with a feverish intensity as Eddie prepared for the upcoming test. He spent hours at the gun station, meticulously practicing the technique that had emerged from his chaotic moment of clarity. His shipmates were skeptical, some openly derisive, yet others watched with a flicker of hope in their eyes. March 25, 1942, arrived with a sense of dread and excitement. The USS New Orleans was in position during a simulated combat drill. A small squadron of mock enemy aircraft, drones operated from the ship, approached, their engines roaring like angry hornets. Eddie stood at the ready, sweat trickling down his brow, his fingers tapping nervously against the metal of the gun. "Focus, O'Connell," he muttered to himself, channeling the resolve that had surged within him that fateful day. The gunner next to him, a seasoned veteran named Williams, shot him an encouraging nod. "Just do what you did last time," Williams whispered. "You got this." As the drones drew nearer, Eddie's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through him. He recalled the instinctive movements, the rhythm that had felt so natural in the heat of his previous encounter. The moment came. The first drone swooped in, diving dangerously close. "Now!" Eddie shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. With precision, he tracked the drone, his body moving fluidly as he pulled the trigger, unleashing a barrage of shells. The drone erupted into a fiery explosion, pieces scattering across the open sky. Cheers erupted from the crew. Eddie's heart soared, but there was no time to celebrate. More drones were coming, and he needed to replicate the success. "Again!" he yelled, and with a rapid-fire speed, Eddie engaged each target, his movements now second nature. One by one, they fell from the sky, each explosion igniting a sense of triumph among the crew. The air was electric, a blend of disbelief and exhilaration. After the drill, Eddie stood before Captain Baird and the command officers. "The results speak for themselves," he said, breathless with excitement. "Losses reduced by 85%, Baird interrupted, a hint of astonishment creeping into his voice. "You did it, O'Connell. You actually did it. Sir, I believe we should implement this technique in actual combat scenarios. It could save lives. A wave of murmurs rippled through the officers, a blend of skepticism and intrigue. Commander Thompson, still clinging to his doubts, frowned. This was a drill. Combat is different. You can't expect— Enough! Baird cut in, his voice firm. We cannot ignore the data presented here. I'm drafting a report for higher command. Eddie, you've opened a door that we must not close. The mood shifted, a palpable change in the air as hope began to replace doubt. Eddie felt a surge of gratitude and relief wash over him. He had been dismissed, his worth questioned, but now he stood on the precipice of potential change. I won't let you down, Captain, Eddie vowed, his voice steady, filled with determination. I'll show them it works. As the meeting adjourned, Eddie felt a mix of triumph and fear. This was only the beginning. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but he was ready to face them. He had turned the tide, if only for a moment, and his journey had just begun. The legacy of an unlikely hero was being forged, and with it came the promise of innovation born from courage, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to challenge the status quo. Let's change the way we fight, Eddie whispered to himself, igniting a spark of hope against the backdrop of war. In the depths of his heart, he knew that this was only the first step toward a greater battle, one that would redefine their approach to warfare forever. December 1945. The war has ended, yet the echoes of gunfire still reverberate in the hearts of many, especially within the steel walls of the USS New Orleans, now docked in San Francisco. Eddie O'Connell, once a feared and revered gunner, stands on the deck, staring out at the bay where the Golden Gate Bridge rises majestically in the distance, a symbol of resilience and hope. He clutches a well-worn diary under his arm, the pages filled with reflections that capture a journey marked by innovation, born from desperation. The Navy is now buzzing about Eddie's outlandish technique, the one that had transformed an instinctual mistake into the cornerstone of anti-aircraft strategy. Eddie, you did it, a fellow sailor remarks, nudging him playfully. But Eddie's eyes betray a deeper weariness. He remembers the frantic moments of that fateful day on the deck, the sheer chaos of the battle, and the chance encounter that led to the invention of a method that would save countless lives. In the years following the war, statistics reveal the profound impact of Eddie's adjustments to gunnery technique. Reports show that ships employing his method reduced losses due to aerial attacks by an astonishing 85%. The number of sailors saved from a fiery demise climbed into the thousands, a legacy built on a foundation of courage and a few sips too many that day. Yet, amidst the accolades and the newfound strategies, Eddie remains a modest figure, reluctant to bask in the glory. As he walks along the pier, he encounters a group of young sailors, their eyes bright with excitement over the stories of valor from the war. "Did you hear about the drunk gunner who changed everything?" one of them says, laughter bubbling in the air. Eddie smiles, a bittersweet twist to his lips. The truth is much richer, laced with moments of vulnerability and human error, those very mistakes that had birthed innovation. "Yeah, I heard about him," Eddie responds, his voice low, but it wasn't about being drunk. It was about surviving. We were all scared. We had to adapt. He watches as their expressions shift from amusement to intrigue, the gravity of his words sinking in. Years later, Eddie finds himself in a quiet cafe, the soft clinking of coffee cups surrounding him like a warm embrace. He sees a newspaper article showcasing a new generation of naval officers. The headline screams, "Innovative techniques reshape naval warfare." They speak of the O'Connell method, a testament to the adaptability of the human spirit in dire circumstances. Yet Eddie is not present in the limelight. He remains in the shadows, sipping his coffee and reminiscing. His life post-war is simple. He takes on a role as a mentor for new recruits, sharing not only tactics but the underlying philosophy of courage and adaptability. Every battle is fought not just with weapons, but with the willingness to learn and evolve, he imparts during training sessions, his words echoing deeper lessons than mere gunfire. An unexpected knock at the door breaks his solitude one afternoon. It's a young officer, bright-eyed and eager. "Sir, I've heard about your contribution. Can I ask you about your experiences?" The officer's genuine curiosity ignites something within Eddie. He sits down, sharing anecdotes woven with failures and triumphs, laughter and tears, emphasizing how innovation doesn't stem from flawless execution, but from the courage to face the unknown. Months pass, and Eddie's health begins to decline. One evening, as the sun sets over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he opens his diary. With trembling hands, he writes down his final thoughts. Innovation doesn't need credentials. It needs courage. His words emerge as a testament not only to his journey, but as a universal lesson for future generations. The essence of bravery lies not solely in the grand gestures, but also in the quiet moments of ingenuity born from necessity. He closes the diary, a soft smile gracing his face, knowing he has left behind more than just a technique. He has instilled a belief in the power of human error to create profound change. Eddie O'Connell passes away quietly, his name quietly etched into naval history, yet the impact of his actions continues to ripple through the ranks of the Navy. The O'Connell method becomes a fundamental part of training, ensuring that future generations learn not just to shoot at the enemy, but to adapt, innovate, and be courageous in the face of adversity. His epitaph reads simply, "A man who turned his mistake into a legacy." The people who come to pay their respects speak in hushed tones, recounting stories of bravery, ingenuity, and the importance of human connection that transcends the battlefield. In the end, Eddie's life is a poignant reminder that true innovation often arises from the most unexpected places. As the world spins forward, one fact remains clear. Courage is not about the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. What impossible ideas do you think could change the world? Comment below.